Good evening. On behalf of the Cape Cod Republican Club, I am pleased to welcome you to the Cape and Islands District Attorney debate. My name is Peter Hughes, the club president. Our original plan was to have all three candidates in studio for this debate. Unfortunately, on Monday, we learned that Jack Carey had tested positive for COVID. In an effort to accommodate this unforeseen event, we worked out a solution to have Jack zoom into the debate with a video monitor up here on the stage to debate. This morning, however, we were advised that Jack would be unable to participate in debate, even by Zoom. The Cape Cod Republican Club made every effort to bring you all three candidates for district attorney, but we have been unsuccessful. However, the debate goes on, and we thank Melissa Alden and Daniel Higgins for their patience and cooperation as we work through the details of putting on this event. So this evening, we will have a two-candidate debate, which we hope you will find informative and educational. So at this time, I'll turn the program over to our moderator, Matt Pitta.
Thank you, Peter, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the debate between the Republican candidates for Cape and Islands District Attorney. As Peter mentioned, I'm your moderator and host for the evening, Matt Pitta. We welcome all of you out there watching tonight on Cape Media Channel 98, and also those of you watching and listening online. As Peter said, tonight we're going to hear from two of the GOP candidates running for the district attorney seat, Melissa Alden and Dan Higgins, both running in the GOP primary coming up in September. One of the three candidates, Mr. Carey, and also between Dan Higgins and Melissa Alden, one of those three will face the Democrat in this race, Rob Galliboy, in the November general election. A little bit of historical reference for this seat. For the first time in 20 years, the race for the Cape and Islands District Attorney is actually an open seat with the retirement of our longtime District Attorney, Michael O'Keefe. At the completion of his term, Mr. O'Keefe will have served for 20 years as District Attorney, 20 years prior to that in roles as First Assistant and as an Assistant District Attorney. The next District Attorney for this district will be only the third District Attorney for this district since the creation in 1975, when Phil Rollins successfully petitioned the legislature to have what was then the New Bedford, Fall River, and Cape and Islands District split into two regions. So again, a very important election, as we'll have a brand new district attorney for the first time in 20 years. We'd like to thank the Cape Cod Republican Club for sponsoring tonight's forum. We'll go over some of the ground rules. First of all, as the moderator, I will be keeping you to your allotted time. We have a timekeeper just off camera, as well as assisting in providing the cues for us here tonight. In just a moment, we'll begin with opening statements from the two candidates that are here with us tonight. I'll have Peter come back up to read the statement that we did receive from Mr. Carey tonight regarding tonight's debate.
Thank you, Matt. We reached out to the John Kerry campaign for an opening statement. I'll summarize what they provided to us. And says John Kerry is unable to participate in tonight's debate because he is very ill with COVID. His campaign advises that due to his experience in the military, his lungs are compromised. John is, however, expected to make a full recovery, but it may take time. Out of respect for the safety of the community and his own health, John is unable to participate this evening. John is disappointed that he won't be able to express his goals, opinions, and plans for the district attorney's office. He is anxious to get back on the campaign trail and looks forward to outlining his vision for keeping the Cape and Islands safe and participating in a full campaign schedule. We all hope and pray for a speedy recovery for John.
All right, thank you, Peter. We'll go over a couple more of the ground rules, and then we'll get right underway. After we have our opening statements here from our two candidates in studio, each candidate will then go into the question round, and they'll each be asked questions with a 2-minute response. If the other candidate here tonight is directly referred to in one of the candidates' answer, at the moderator's discretion, myself, we will allow the candidate whose name is mentioned in that response to rebut for 1 minute. And again, Please keep track of our timekeeper. He'll be assisting off camera in keeping track of us throughout the evening. And then when we get to the end of the debate this evening, after about an hour, we'll have our closing statements. So before the debate began tonight, we had a very exciting coin toss to determine who would go first. And the determination from that coin toss is that Dan Higgins will open first with his opening statement. Melissa Alden will go second, and then we'll reverse the order in the close with Melissa Alden first and Dan Higgins second. So let's get underway. That's what folks are here and watching for. We'll begin with our first opening statement from Dan Higgins. Dan, please.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, everyone. First and foremost, I'd like to say that we wish Jack well and a speedy recovery. We hope to see him at the next debate, which is scheduled for September 1st with Pat Dismaris. Thank you for hosting. Thank you, Peter, for putting this debate together. Odds are you have already met me on the campaign trail, or you have seen my ads, or met someone who has worked with me or knows me. My name is Dan Higgins. I've been a prosecutor for 13 years for the Cape and Islands. I attended Boston College. I then attended Suffolk Law School with the goal of becoming a prosecutor. I was in what was called the Prosecutor's Clinic, worked in Dorchester District Court as a student attorney, and the prosecutors there entrusted me to try cases. That confirmed for me that this was the way I could help my community as a prosecutor. I felt fortunate to be hired in this office. I believe in law and order. I come from a law enforcement family. I would like to serve, and I would ask for your vote. I would like to serve as the next district attorney, the third district attorney for the Cape and Islands. I've been a prosecutor for 13 years. This is my home. I live in the district. I live with my wife, Elizabeth, and our infant son, Charlie. My wife was born and raised in Barnstable. I do have a passion for this job. There are real meaningful moments and days and cases where it's a feeling of justice, that as a prosecutor, you're able to give that victim a sense of justice in court. And I would ask for the vote of the listeners. I look forward to the debate tonight, and I would ask for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Our opening statement from Melissa Alden, please.
Good evening. I reiterate Dan's request for a well recovery for Jack Carey. We're sorry that he couldn't be here today with us. And thank you to the Republican town committees and to the Republican Club for hosting this debate. And you, Matt, for taking your time out as well. I'm disappointed that I lost the coin toss, but that's okay. We'll go forward from there. My name is Melissa Alden. I live here. I work here. I've served here. I've been in this community since 1999. I've been raising my children here. I've worked locally at the restaurants and worked my way through the management in the restaurants. I've worked as a clerk and an administrative assistant at the police department. I've been a police officer. I served for 11 years for the town of Yarmouth. I've also been an attorney for 13 years. I went to school nights and weekends in order to be able to become an attorney and also to attend the police academy. My kids have gone to public schools here. I do believe that we need to promote community safety. I believe in our Constitution. I believe in law and order. And I believe that we need to fully prosecute violent and repeat offenders. My goal is to ensure that we have ongoing public safety. My experience differs from my opponent here, Dan, in that I've had experience in the community. And I think that's important as a district attorney, because the role of the district attorney is not to prosecute cases. It's to ensure public safety, and it's to ensure justice. I believe that my experience and my background as a law enforcement officer, as well as a mother to children in this community, can give me an advantage in bringing our DA's office to the next level. We have had programs that are in place that need to have changes made to them so that we can have a safer community. We can address issues of substance abuse, mental health, and our veterans here in this town. I look forward to answering these questions and to a debate with my fellow candidate, Dan.
Great, thank you, Melissa. Let's get right to the questions. And the way we'll start here, Dan Higgins is closest to me. You'll take the first question first, then Melissa Alden, and then for the second question, we'll reverse the order and go through that order as we go through the evening. So again, same question is to both of you. We've had your opening statements, but I would now like you to very specifically detail the skill set that you possess that is going to qualify you to hold the top law enforcement job on Cape Cod. Dan Higgins.
Thank you, Matt. There's no replacement for experience. Whether you're hiring someone to work on your home or a surgeon to perform a surgery, there is no replacement for experience. This is a job that has experienced professionals working in this office, and they have more experience as prosecutors than many of the candidates in this race. They require an experienced leader, one that they know has the experience and the skill set to lead them. It is not just knowing criminal law, it is having learned from the experience of what works in court, how to prosecute a case. I am the only candidate in the primary who has prosecuted a case. I have prosecuted every type of case in the Cape and Islands courts, up to and including murder. I prosecuted the murderer of Sergeant Sean Gannon last August with First Assistant Mike Trudeau. I have been a supervisor in the district court. I have led a team of 10 prosecutors across 5 district courts on the Cape, Nantucket, and Martha's Vineyard. And I've supervised 15,000 cases roughly a year that come through the front doors of those courthouses. Those ADAs require someone who has experience, someone who can answer questions about cases maybe they've never seen before, a fact set never seen before. It is a special skill set and one that cannot be replaced simply by wanting the job. I would politely suggest to the viewers that I could hit the ground running, that I know the programs that the DA's office runs in this community in terms of prevention, education, and I know the difference when human frailty is the cause of a crime and someone has no record and how to treat them, and when there is a serious, lifelong criminal who requires prosecution to the fullest extent of the law, including the Armed Career Criminal Statute. That is the difference, and that is the skill set I would suggest is necessary.
Thank you, Dan. Melissa Alden, please, same question. Would you like, and I will ask if either you need the question repeated. We're more than happy to do that. So it was on your specific skill set.
Right. So, thank you, Matt. So the skill sets for a district attorney, obviously the role of district attorney differs from the role of a prosecutor. The district attorney's role is to oversee the office and make sure that you hire the best. And that includes leadership ability and leadership skills. It also includes the knowledge of the community and resources within the community, and to be able to hit the ground running in the sense that you have an awareness of what's going on in the community. As a police officer, you learn that it's not all that you learn in books. It's what you learn on the streets and the knowledge of what crimes are around you. What we have to look at is the role of the district attorney is not to prosecute the cases. That's the role of the assistant district attorneys. And I think that it's important to note that I have the experience of knowing what crimes are in the community. I've been inside the district court and represented as a witness to cases. And I've seen what hasn't worked, and I've seen what lacks in the district attorney's office so that we're ensuring that we have full prosecution of our violent repeat offenders. I think that the skill set that is needed for this office is to have an awareness of the community, what crimes, why crimes are being effectuated, and how we can make our community safer by preventing potential crimes and criminals in our community.
Thank you, Melissa. The second question will stay with you. You get the first crack at the second question, Melissa Alden. If you are elected as the next district attorney, what is the first initiative that you're going to launch as the new Cape and Islands district attorney?
So, Matt, I think it's going to be a conjunction. I think one of the biggest things is we need to effectuate change within the DA's office infrastructure. I think we need to look at, is it working in the best way possible? I've looked at the different district attorneys' offices throughout Massachusetts, and I think there's a way to restructure so that we have individuals that are supervising different areas that we can focus on. We need to focus more on prevention. We need to focus more on the prosecution of violent and repeat offenders. I think that we have an opportunity to have a high-risk violent repeat offender unit where we can actually track these individuals so that we're not having cases pled out that shouldn't be pled out where we have mandatory minimums.
Thank you. Same question for Dan Higgins, please. First initiative you would launch.
Thank you, Matt. The first thing I would do as district attorney during the transition period is I would meet with a team of prosecutors, the experienced prosecutors in this office who know best what is occurring in each courtroom, who know best what is working and not working, and I will hear them out on what they think could or should be changed. I have not heard in this race any specifics as to what is going wrong in this district attorney's office. I think this district attorney's office has served the community well. I think these career prosecutors in this office know how to separate the minor offenses from the serious offenses. These prosecutors review cases for the Armed Career Criminal Statute, habitual offender, and these are some of the tools that we can use for violent crimes. We know when to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law when someone has a violent history or has targeted someone and committed a violent offense. We know how to stand up for victims. We do it every day. We meet with them in privacy, and often those feelings aren't stated in the courtroom. Sometimes they want to testify, sometimes they don't, and we have to make what we call an evidence-based determination on a case. Sometimes we proceed on a case successfully without victims. I did that recently without a cooperative victim. The murder of Sergeant Sean Gannon, I prosecuted again. He received another 9 to 12 years on top of his life sentence just about 2 months ago. That is a case I prosecuted without any cooperation from the victim. I would review all the programs of this office. I would ensure that we continue to work with the community. We have 6 community outreach professionals who work with our school systems, with the principals. We do diversion programs for juveniles, youthful offenders, and adults now. We have over 5,000 people who have graduated that program. And I would humbly suggest that we have many graduates who have not gone on to commit another crime. And those are some of the reviews I would do and initiatives I would take.
Thank you, Dan Higgins. Dan, we're going to stay with you for our next question. So one of you or Mr. Carey will face off against the Democrat, Rob Galliboy, in November. If you're the Republican nominee after the September primary, please be specific on how you would differentiate yourself from Mr. Galliboy and why you would be more qualified to hold that office. And we stay with Dan first, please.
Matt, respectfully, I have almost 13 years in the district attorney's office. I went to law school to become a prosecutor. I haven't devoted my entire legal career to prosecution, to the community, specifically the Cape and Islands. All of my time as an attorney has been here serving the Cape and Islands and trying to promote public safety by prosecuting crimes. That is the role of the DA's office, to promote public safety, and we do that by prosecuting crimes. Incarceration is not a bad word. It is necessary for people who have a genuine evil in what they do, who target victims, be that a domestic, be that a violent drug dealer on drug dealer crime, be that the assault of a child, one of the most important types of cases that we handle and one of the most difficult for prosecutors to handle day in and day out and to try. Those cases are very important. Those are some of what I feel are important, and yes.
Thank you, Dan. Melissa Alden, the question to you again, if you are the nominee again, specifically what is going to distinguish or differentiate yourself from Mr. Galliboy, the Democrat?
Well, I think the most obvious is the fact that I live here, I work here, and I've served here. We do know that Mr. Galliboy has been living in Norwell, and that he decided to run for the district attorney's office and changed his residency in order to run for that office. I think that means that he's out of touch with his community. And as I indicated before, I think that the district attorney's office should be in connection with his community. I think that it's important that you know who's here, you know what's available, and that you have faith in the community and the safety here to raise your family here, to have them attend public schools here. And I think that's the biggest thing that would be a disconnect for Mr. Galliboy going forward. Also the fact that, he's discussed not charging particular crimes. In my eyes, the role of the district attorney is to enforce the laws on the books. And I think that is very important to continue doing.
All right, thank you. We'll stay with you, Melissa Alden, for our next question. We're going to stay along the lines of the differentiation between the Republican and the Democrat, the eventual Republican in this race and the Democrat. So as we mentioned at the outset of the debate, This office has only been held by a Republican since its creation in 1975-76. So how important is it, do you believe, the party of the candidate? A lot of times people look at a district attorney and they may not be interested in their political party. They want to know what their theories, their philosophies are when it comes to criminal justice. So how important is it when a voter is going to go into the November general election and choose between a Democrat or Republican? Does it really matter?
Well, unfortunately, it does matter in the sense of the running of the campaign and trying to get the backing and the financial backing, which, it's very difficult to do. But in regards to that, I think everybody agrees that it should be a nonpartisan position. I think that the main role of the district attorney is to enforce the laws that are on the book. As a conservative Republican, I believe in the Constitution, I believe in law and order, and I believe in fully prosecuting violent repeat offenders. And I think that, that differentiates me from the Democrat candidate because I don't necessarily believe that he is going to fully prosecute individuals. On the other end, we are aware that there's issues and times when people should be diverted, and my history and my background shows that I'm fully aware of that. I've done mental health cases and care and protection cases, and I am aware of the frailty of individuals. I've gone and I've seen victims of crimes and seen people on their worst days where they're suffering from injuries or afflictions from individuals in the community. And I think that that's important to know, that there's a reason for law and order, there's a reason for our Constitution, and that we as district attorneys need to be able to follow those rules and enforce them.
Thank you, Melissa Alden. Dan Higgins, please, same question.
Matt, the Republican Party is supportive of law and order and the police and law enforcement. That is why I am running as a Republican. I believe that this party supports law and order in our community and therefore public safety. The Democrat opponent, Mr. Galabois, comes from a background of the last 20 years as a criminal defense attorney, representing individuals on different levels of crime, including trafficking. He has handled some cases here on the Cape and Islands. I have not met some of the other candidates in court on the Cape and Islands over the last 13 years. However, I have met Mr. Galabois. What I would suggest is his website is already saying that he would do away with bail for all misdemeanor crimes and instruct all of his prosecutors they are not to ask for bail. Matt, that is reminiscent of other problems we've seen in the major cities. San Francisco, the most recent recall election, the problems in Chicago, New York City, Philadelphia. That progressive prosecutor model, while maybe well-intentioned, is not what makes the community safer. In fact, we've seen the opposite. We've seen crime on the rise in the major cities. He has already announced removing bail from all misdemeanors. And I would suggest, Matt, that doesn't take the community into account. That's nice to say about the individual. It might, for the uninformed voter, sound good for a minor offense. But there are situations when someone is not from here, when they have a history of escaping, defaulting, resisting arrest, where cash bail is essential to separate them from the community at the moment, to ensure that they return to court, and that the victim gets justice. When that victim shows up for trial, we want the defendant to be there. They have a right to trial. We'll ensure they get a fair trial. That's what the court system is there for. But if we can't ensure they return, and they won't, if they're facing major penalties, a minimum mandatory sentence, if they know they're going to jail or prison, we need a law and order candidate to ensure that, not a progressive one.
Thank you. Next question, Dan Higgins, we'll stay with you. And we're going to continue along this line for just one more question regarding the political side of this. The current district attorney, Mr. O'Keefe, and his predecessor, Mr. Rollins, both Republicans, navigated a Beacon Hill structure that has been dominated by the Democratic Party for many years. Despite that, as a Republican, you do have to go to Beacon Hill as a DA when you want to advocate for legislation that you believe is important to the district, and both of them have been able to successfully navigate that. So what is your strategy? What would be your strategy as a Republican district attorney in a mostly Democratic state to advocate on Beacon Hill when you need certain initiatives passed? Dan Higgins.
Matt, I would suggest that I have a history of working well with the defense bar. Where we can agree, we'll agree. Where we can't, we respect each other And they understand when we are indicting a case, when we need to try the case, when we are looking for a serious penalty that the defendant or defense attorney may not agree with. Despite that, there is a broad support for our office across the Cape, across attorneys on the Cape, including the criminal defense bar, because they know that we treat people fairly. I would do that as district attorney. Certainly the DA has other roles to advocate for laws, to give his or her input to the governor and to the legislature when they are considering new laws, and I would do that. I suspect as DA you become a little more political as time goes on and you see policies being enacted in other states, in other counties perhaps, that doesn't make the community safer. And if you want to call that political, sure, but I think that's just professional. I think the DA's role is about community safety. It is not a purely political position. It's the position of a person whose job is to prosecute crimes in the courtroom, to ensure that we are treating people fairly, standing up for victims, and seeking the right penalties in cases. And I would suggest to you that I would work well with the legislature or whoever the governor may be to ensure that prosecutors get support across this state, because it is a job that doesn't often get enough praise or enough support. I took this job at $37,000 when starting after paying for college and law school. This job needs support. It needs the support of the legislature, the support of the governor, and I would ensure that that was done.
Thank you, Dan Higgins. Melissa Alden, same question. Navigating Beacon Hill in a mostly Democratic state as a Republican district attorney if elected.
Yes, so Matt, you know, the great thing about being an attorney is we do have a lot of contested issues. We have a lot of differing points of view. And I've had experience actually going up to different legislative issues when I was working with the Massachusetts Association of Women in Law Enforcement. We worked with different agencies trying to promote women and advancing their careers. And with that, you know, we have had multiple different opinions from multiple different backgrounds. And I think that the importance is being able to advocate for your position, state clearly the facts, and to be respectful of other people's opinions, and to respectfully advocate for yours.
Thank you, Melissa. Melissa Alden will stay with you for our next question. Bear with me, a little bit of a lengthy question, but you'll see where we're going with this, and I think this is an important series of questions we're going to go through. So in criminal cases, as we know, it is the police that initially make the arrest, but the district attorney's office then determines whether or not to move forward with prosecution. I take us back to 2021. The former DA in Suffolk County, Rachel Rollins, now U.S. attorney, during an interview with a Boston media outlet, had cited research from 3 universities that claimed declining to prosecute low-level crimes will lead to less crime. Her office at one point declined to prosecute nearly 60% of cases in 2019, up from 42% from her predecessor. So we've seen some of this around the country, as was referred to. Melissa Alden, what will be your policy on not prosecuting crime, or do you subscribe to that theory that not prosecuting crime will lead to less crime?
So I think I've clearly stated that again earlier and on many occasions, but I do not take that stance. I do not believe in progressive district attorneys' offices. I do not that it promotes public safety. I believe that there are laws on the books, and the role of the district attorney's office is to enforce those laws on the books. I think that we've seen the result of those policies throughout Massachusetts, throughout California, and the recall of certain district attorneys that have implemented those similar policies. I believe it's up to the legislation to make changes in regard to rules of law, but it's not the district attorney's role to decide what to enforce and what not.
Thank you, Melissa Alden. Dan Higgins, same question.
Matt, this job is to prosecute the laws that are on the books. As I mentioned, there is a certain category of defendant or crime that may be appropriate for diversion, and we use what we called as discretion there. I mentioned those 5,000 graduates of that program who are often young individuals who made a mistake and are willing to work with us and sign a contract to go into treatment, to do community service, etc. And the majority of those individuals have successfully completed diversion without committing a new offense. Now, I do not believe that the progressive prosecution model creates a safer city. What we saw in Boston was a lack of respect for law and order at times. We saw cruisers being burned. We saw shots being fired. We saw a lack of support backing up of the police when they made an arrest by the district attorney's office. Assistant DAs left that office as a result of that. New people had to be hired. When the DA went in, a memo went out, and it was a rule book, a cookie-cutter approach. And it told the prosecutors on the front line of everything, Dorchester District Court, Boston Municipal Central, told those prosecutors what they can and can't do. If this is the crime, you shall not arraign it. If this is the crime, you can't ask for bail. That didn't support the police or the people in the community, because what that leads to is a lack of respect for law and order and a feeling that with impunity they can get away with the next crime. If you were a shop owner or a citizen who was harmed in one of those crimes and the person was right back out without being arraigned, you didn't feel the support. That model does not work. It is not supportive of law and order or the police community. And I think Boston Police did an excellent job in holding that city together without the support in the DA's office and the court system.
Thank you, Dan Higgins. We'll stay with you. So this is, again, a follow-up to that. So I think we know what the answer is going to be, but I know there was a reference to Mr. Galliboy's website regarding what he would do. So, yeah, Mr. Higgins, we'll start with you. Would there be, or would you ever create a list of crimes that you would not prosecute right out of the bat?
No. There will be no list of crimes which we will not prosecute. Rather, Matt, when I was hired, I was told by District Attorney Michael O'Keefe, after all of my interviews with his staff and being hired, he told me our job is to do the right thing. And you will come under scrutiny at some point in your career, be that from the defendant, the defense attorney, from the public, from the media. And your only job is to do the right thing and not worry about scrutiny. As long as you do the right thing for the right reasons, then you are doing your job. And that's what I believe in. That's the model that I believe in. There will be no prosecution list, because that does not account for someone's criminal record. It doesn't account for the facts of a case. It doesn't account for if it was a crime that was born of a problem with drugs or alcohol versus a crime that was intentional in attacking someone and trying to hurt them, as we see often in a domestic scenario, or drug dealers attacking another drug dealer and violent crime. If we take the cookie-cutter approach and say these crimes we won't prosecute, then people who don't care about law and order will act with impunity in the community. Chief Bill Bratton and the broken windows theory is still something we should all reflect upon, because if you don't prosecute the minor crimes, then there is a feeling that you won't prosecute the major crimes. I believe that instead the role of each prosecutor is to use their experience and their discretion in separating those cases which are minor and may be appropriate for probation or something else, versus those cases that need incarceration to send the message to the defendant who has committed the crime again, who has hurt someone, who is trafficking narcotics, including fentanyl, in our community with impunity, because it results in a profit in targeting our vulnerable citizens. That is the model I believe in, and treating cases on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you, Dan Higgins. And Melissa Alden, will go to you again. Same question. Would you ever have a list of crimes that just would not be prosecuted on their face?
Thanks, Matt. I think I've already answered that, but to reiterate, absolutely not. There are laws in the book, and there's books, and there's a reason for that. And what stems from some of these crimes are victims. So we have plenty of legislation in place that protects defendants' rights. What we don't have is the victims' rights, and our victims of crimes deserve as much, if not more, attention in regard to certain crimes. What I would also like to discuss is that, if there's a concern that there's disparate treatment as a result of these crimes that are being prosecuted, that maybe some review of the way that data is collected and evidence is brought forth as to this treatment of disparate treatment of individuals, that the system of producing that information and recording it is consistent across the Cape and Islands. Because what I've read and seen is that there's really no consistent collection of information as to who's arrested, whether there's issues as to what their sociological background is, and to determine whether or not it's affecting a certain class or group of people. I think that the collection of information needs to be updated and reviewed so that we are looking into that, so those concerns could be eradicated, and that we can be proactive and not reactive, and protect our law enforcement in being able to do their job without being accused of being treating people differently based on their backgrounds.
Thank you, Melissa Alden. We'll stay with you, and we're going to just flesh this out just a little bit more. We've heard both of you state here tonight from that last question that there would be no creation of a list of crimes that are off limits totally for you, but we have heard the word discretion and that the district attorney's office has a level of discretion. Could you talk a little bit about your theory, your philosophy as you would look at an individual case and have your staff looking at it, is what plays into that level of discretion when you're going to make those determinations?
Yeah, so it's been mentioned that there's no concrete plan that's been talked about as to changes to implement in the district attorney's office. I think that some of those changes are specific to mental health issues, to substance use issues, and to issues with the veterans. I'm aware that we have programs within the court, but it's apparent that they're not working. It's apparent that we have ongoing and increasing amounts of substance use issues. We have a large population of our incarcerated that have mental health issues. So I would say that we have to I lost my train of
Sure,
thought.
take a moment to collect yourself and please continue on.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. So what we've heard throughout the evening, in our previous question, we heard that neither of you would have a list of crimes that are off limits, and we've seen that. And what we have heard tonight is the word discretion, that each of you said that there could be
I knew I was good. Thank you. Yes, so Matt, I knew I was getting off topic, so I did need you to get me back into the pace. So you know, in regard to discretion, I think discretion is great. As a police officer, we are allowed to have discretion in regards to charging and you know, whether or not there was a crime that we believed was being committed. Within the DA's office, my concern is that there's extended discretion when there's not enough oversight. Because we have a lot of ADAs that come straight out of law school who have no life experience, and that my concern would be that if there's not ongoing oversight and training, that the discretion can lead to some inappropriate diversions or inappropriate chargings, or missing some important issues in cases. In regards to discretion in instances where there's a veteran involved, substance use, mental health, I think that, you know, we need to revamp those programs and make sure that we are making options available that actually are helping and reducing recidivism.
Thank you, Melissa Alden. Dan Higgins, same question to you again. We heard the word discretion here a couple of times tonight with the basis that both of you have said there's no crime that would be off the list of prosecution. What's your philosophy, again, theory of discretion, if you are going to be looking at cases with your team as to how to move forward with them?
Thank you, Matt. One of the biggest aspects of discretion, when we say discretion as a prosecutor, one of the biggest parts of that is victim input. We may meet with a victim once, or we may meet with a victim 10 times. Those meetings, sometimes we make those feelings of the victim public. It's their choice when they speak at a disposition or after a guilty verdict, after a jury trial, at sentencing. But we have to use our discretion because in those private moments, we learn victims' true feelings, true fears, includes the fear of testifying sometimes, Matt. There is concern on behalf of parents on the age of a very young victim. There is concern on the part of the family on someone who is a sexual assault victim. And it would be cruel of us not to take that into consideration in trying to resolve the case for the best way possible for the victim and the community. That is one of the sensitive areas that we look at when I say discretion. If we had a policy that just said, if this is the charge, this is the offer, it would be cold to the victims of violent crimes, of sexual assaults, because we might be forcing them to testify in all of those situations. Instead, we use our discretion to get a sense of the victim's ability to testify, get a sense of their feelings and how they would do with the process, how it would affect them going forward. And we make a call as to whether we make an offer prior to trial, whether we accept an offer that a defendant makes to the court, because they have a right to put an offer to the court, or whether we end up on trial. That discretion includes evaluating someone who's a veteran, and we divert some of them under the Valor Act and Brave Act at arraignment. That includes mental health. We have a form that we've passed out to all of the police departments. Some choose to use it, some don't as much. But that form alerts a prosecutor to what they know about the mental health of the individual prior to arraignment. We take that into account. We use Veterans Court, we use Mental Health Court, and we use our ability to consider diversion and bail.
Thank you, Dan. We'll stay with Dan Higgins for our next question. We're going to turn towards the issue of drugs. Unfortunately, Cape Cod's been fighting, not just the Cape, but the country's been fighting the scourge of drugs for many years. Here on the Cape, we've seen an ebb and flow, cocaine, heroin, fentanyl, and more. What role would you take as the district attorney in continuing the ongoing fight that has been led over the last many years, and what initiatives would you either keep and or add when it comes to this issue of the drug scourge? And please be as specific as you can.
Matt, thank you. The drug scourge is one of the most important things facing Cape Codders right now. We have all heard of overdoses. We've all known someone through a neighbor, a friend, a family member who has been affected by the opiate problem on Cape Cod. We cannot arrest our way out of it. It is an important tool that we have to charge drug dealers, to seek incarceration. And incarceration is not a bad word. We are one of the lowest states in terms of incarceration on a recent study of incarceration rates. Instead, we may have a recidivism issue, but not an incarceration problem. Incarceration is necessary because it is a business model and a business choice that drug dealers make. They see an opportunity for a large profit. They see an opening when a drug ring goes down, and they set up their ring as soon as there's an opening. We've seen this before. We work with law enforcement partners at the state, local, and federal level. We have a task force associated with our office, state police troopers assigned to our office, and local police departments that have signed on to our task force. They do ongoing narcotic investigations, what we call interdiction. They use the power of a search warrant when they have what we call probable cause to get a search warrant. They confiscate drugs, they confiscate the profits of drug dealers. That is what when we say interdiction, what we mean. And we have prosecutors who indict those cases, trafficking cases, and seek a prison sentence. We're trying to disincentivize people from doing it. We work with our federal law enforcement partners, including a DEA task force. There's another aspect, obviously, Matt, treatment for those users, as well as prevention programs in schools. It takes a community effort, not just the court system and the DA's office. We need to get to kids at an early age in high school to alert them about the dangers of fentanyl and how it can be fatal at the first time. It is that combination of prevention, encouraging treatment, and interdiction that we need to continue.
Thank you, Dan. Melissa Alden, same question for you. Again, scourge of drugs on the Cape, heroin, fentanyl, et cetera. Policies that you would like to continue that have been launched over the many years by the current DA, or additional programs that you would add as well?
So, Matt, I have the experience of having firsthand seen in 2014 the explosion of the opioid epidemic on Cape and Islands. I was an officer that responded every day to overdoses and had to administer Narcan to individuals in our community. I saw the destruction of many young lives and many families, and the heartache of families trying to determine how their children became addicted. As a law enforcement officer, we also had a number of individuals coming into our town and trafficking drugs, and with that brought trafficking children and a varied amount of other crimes with it. As a district attorney, I believe that it would behoove our community to focus more on prevention. I hear that there's prevention programs. I hear there's diversion programs. But what we can see is that these programs are not working because it's not getting better in our community. We're having more people getting addicted. We're losing more children. And more families are feeling the pain of this addiction. I've worked obviously in the police department, and I'm aware of the task forces. I'm aware of the connections with the DA, and you know, a lot of times we have confidential informants who are repeat offenders themselves that are bringing these poisons into our community. And then what I've also seen is I do care and protection. I've done care and protection cases and guardianship of minor, and that involves substance use issues with parents. And the programs that we're offering and telling them that they have to participate in aren't making them better. We need to make sure that we have appropriate programs in place so that individuals can actually get better. We need to focus more on prevention. I think the Drug Endangered Children program would be great to bring to the Cape and Islands. It's been in place in Connecticut for a number of years. I've mentioned it to my former chief that we should focus on prevention, and it's something that we need to pay attention to.
Thank you, Melissa. We'll stay with you, Melissa Alden. If you could you cite either a specific criminal case or, say, a series of cases that have been prosecuted over the past several years that you think have had a very significant impact on Cape Cod?
Well, obviously the first case that would come to mind was Sean Gannon case involving Tom Latanovich. I worked with Sean as a Yarmouth police officer, and we had been dealing with Latanovich for a number of years. When I first came on in 2007, we were chasing him, and he was being charged with domestic assaults. Then it came to carrying guns, and it escalated each year. We know that they call him 125 because of the number of charges. What is not known is that there's been many other encounters as a police officer that didn't necessarily rise to a probable cause issue. And here, you know, we had a violent repeat offender. A lot of times, why mandatory and minimum charges were pled out may have kept him in jail longer. We also have Lil Ant, Anthony Rust, the same type of issue. He was charged many times with gun charges, trafficking charges, charges that have mandatory minimums. Why we have ongoing repeat offenders in our community needs to be looked at. And you know, as Dan had said, we have another candidate who's running as the he's defended these individuals and put them back out into our communities. I think that we need to look at why we have repeat offenders. Are they dangerous people that deserve a second chance, or do we need to be fully prosecuting them and making sure mandatory minimum charges are pushed through?
Thank you, Melissa Alden. Dan Higgins, same question for you, either a case or series of cases that have been prosecuted by the DA's office in recent years that you think has had a significant impact on the community.
Thank you, Matt. First of all, with respect to the murder of Sergeant Sean Gannon, I recently tried him again and gave him another 9 to 12 sentence on and after his current life sentence. What hasn't been mentioned by all the candidates along the trail yet is that sentencing is by the court. The district attorney on the case makes a recommendation, and it is often, in the case of violent crimes, higher than what the sentence ends up being. The judge has to balance the recommendations between the Commonwealth, who represents the community, and the defense attorney, who represents the defendant. I would encourage people to be in the courtroom for some of these trials, to watch it if you have the time. You will see how hard these ADAs work. You will see what they recommend for a sentence, which is often not reported in the articles that are just done from the docket. With respect to that defendant, about a year prior, there was a domestic he was charged with. That recording is available in the media, and I was very proud of the assistant district attorney that worked with me, who pushed that case to where it could go and fought for what we call an excited utterance. Another tool, sometimes a rare tool in the prosecutor's bag, is to use an excited utterance to try and keep a case going forward that otherwise couldn't go forward. There was a hearing of that case, which is recorded, in which we made every effort to try and prosecute that case. More recently, a meaningful case in this community took me 3 years because of COVID, but I was able to get justice for a victim who was sexually assaulted between 6 and 12 years old. That case, a member of the minority community, the victim, and the defendant, a family member, it took 3 years to prosecute that case because the court systems stop the jury system due to COVID. It became a real problem for the criminal justice system. At the end of that, it was no better feeling than hearing the mother of that victim tell the court that she long last had justice and the system worked. And that man received 24 to 30 years in prison for his crimes. That was an amazing, amazing moment, and the jury came back for sentencing Matt.
All right, thank you, Dan Higgins. We have time for one more very quick question. We'll go right to closing statements. This next question really doesn't necessarily require a long answer. Dan, we'll stay with you, please, at this point. Basically, what is the most pressing criminal issue facing Cape Cod and the islands right now?
I'm sorry, is it to me, Matt?
Yeah, it's to you, please.
Thank you. Matt, I would suggest that during the COVID pandemic, much of our focus in our lives, our personal lives, our work lives, and in the media, the focus has been on the pandemic as it has affected the community in all aspects of our lives. We have not seen enough attention as to the ongoing opiate problem on Cape Cod. There are vulnerable citizens who are targeted by these dealers to make a profit. It is an ongoing issue. I think a modern prosecutor needs to not only encourage the task forces and police to keep going after those drug dealers and interdicting the crime by performing search warrants, car stops, by confiscating the drugs and the profit that they are making, and then our office indicting those trafficking cases and seeking the appropriate state prison sentence. But I also believe that we need to work on education for our young Cape Codders to warn them about fentanyl and the newer designer drugs that are coming out that are 10 to 20 times more potent than fentanyl and coming in a fake pill form billed as something else. We also need to work on encouraging users who end up in court because of a related crime or a possession of a small amount of narcotics. We need to use the court system to encourage them to go to treatment that they've never been to before in their lives. There have been multiple cases where I have encouraged the defense attorney to encourage their client to go into treatment and get us proof that they went into an intensive outpatient program or inpatient program, and to get us proof of that. And in return, we can give them an offer on their case that we use to encourage them to go into that treatment. We can help the community and the individual because the goal is to prevent crime again, to prevent recidivism. And if we can do those at the same time, how great is that for the community?
Thank you, Dan. Melissa Alden, the single most important criminal issue facing the Cape.
Well, I would have to say that the biggest criminal issue is our children and the exploitation, child abuse that has been exacerbated by COVID. We've had no eyes on these children. There's been, what comes with the drug trafficking is exploitation, children trafficking, but children in the homes that have nobody there to advocate for them. What concerns me about that case that we finally got justice 3 years later is that individual was out in our community for 3 years, and the only restraints on him was he had to wear his GPS, stay away from the victim and the victim's mother. But what about the other potential victims in our community and making sure that we're keeping everybody else safe in our community? I think we need to also look at, with the sentencing structure that mandatory minimums have mandatory sentence requirements that the judges cannot go away from. To me, it's a pretty common sense that don't plea out those cases that we have with mandatory minimums. These involve issues that are for our victims. We focus so much on the defendants and their rights. We need to focus on victims.
Thank you to both candidates for answering our questions here tonight. We'll go right to our closing statements. We reverse the order from opening. And Melissa Alden will stay with you, please. 2 minutes closing statement, please.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you again for the time. What I have to bring to this district attorney's race is being a mother, being in this community, being a law enforcement officer, and knowing what's going on in our community and what we need to do to change it, to make it safer. The role of the district attorney is to make the community safe and to provide justice. There's 3 requirements in order to become a district attorney: being an attorney, being a resident, and being elected. Nothing in regards to being a prosecutor. And I think that what you need to look at is we've had the same 20 years of office. And if we look to vote for somebody who's in that office right now, we're most likely going to have the next 10, 20 years being the same issues going on in our community. We need to make our community safer and make sure that we're fully prosecuting violent and repeat offenders so that we don't have them out in our communities. We need to make sure that we have programs that actually work, not just something on the paper to show that you participated in an outpatient program. These programs need to make our kids better. They need to save our kids so we don't have to bury any more kids. We need to make sure that we're fully prosecuting individuals who are trafficking and bringing drugs into our community. We also need to make sure that we're making as many offers and options for our veterans in this community. We have 28,000 veterans on the Cape and Islands. We have a session that's available in the Plymouth County and the Valor Act that Dan referenced. The issue is we need to have more here on the Cape. Why are there only five courts in the state that offer this veteran session? The pilot program's there, let's bring it to the Cape and Islands for our 28,000 veterans. We also have to look at programs that actually work to help people recover from substance use disorder. What they have in place hasn't been working. I say vote for me if you want to make changes and see us go to the next level and keep our community safe, keep our kids safe. Thank you, and I ask for your vote.
Thank you. Dan Higgins, 2 minutes, closing statement, please.
Thank you, Matt. My name is Dan Higgins, and I've been a prosecutor for 13 years. I come from a law enforcement family. My father was a Marine and an FBI agent. My mother, an FBI agent for over 30 years, each of them. I believe in law and order. I went to law school so I could serve my community. I was fortunate enough to be hired in this office. I didn't know anyone in this office, but I had a connection to the Cape, having grown up in the summers in Dennis. I believe in law and order. I would bring the 13 years of experience that I have in this office, not only prosecuting every type of crime, including murder, motor vehicle homicide, rapes, kidnappings, mayhem. I would not only bring all of that experience on my trial work, I would also bring my experience supervising the qualified professional prosecutors in this office. For 7 years, I supervised 10 prosecutors who ran 5 district courts across the Cape and Islands. We see approximately 15,000 cases a year. We make judgment calls every day on the front line in the main session courtroom of each of these courthouses. We make decisions of what cases to indict, what penalties to seek, when to consider victim input as the most pressing issue in a case. We use our judgment and experience to handle these cases. This DA's office has served this community well over the years. I was taught to do the right thing from day one. I am honored to be endorsed by not only the District Attorney, Michael O'Keefe, but also Sheriff Jim Cummings, and about a dozen other law enforcement agencies, half of which we have announced, from across Cape Cod. There is a reason for that. It's not just because I have worked as a prosecutor. It's because they know my reputation. They know my leadership. I humbly ask for your support in the upcoming September 6th primary. I would be honored to be your next district attorney.
Thank you, Dan, and thanks to both of our candidates who are here with us tonight, Dan Higgins and Melissa Alden. Thanks so much for watching tonight. Get out and vote. Primary is coming up in September. Thanks for being with us this evening.